Ever since I had a stream a couple of months ago, that the microphone didn't work, I've been so nervous about starting a stream, and it just there's no microphone capabilities. Anyway, oh cool. Okay, I started this live stream. It said 0 people were waiting, but I was like, we're just gonna start it and see what happens. But now there's 1 person here, so it's officially a live stream. It's not a recording of me talking that people will watch later, maybe. But this is I think I did a live stream last month, right? It's amazing to me how quickly they happen. I'm always like, whoa, it's the middle of the next month already. Um oh, I know why. It's because last month I delayed it a week. And so instead of doing it in like the middle of the month, I did it in the back half of the month. So yeah, it's been like 3 weeks since the last stream. Anyway, it's been a busy 3 weeks. I've recorded my next video. I've started editing my next video. I'm really hoping it'll be out before the end of March. And that's top 10 favorite films of 2024. I haven't done a top 10 list since COVID started. It's really fun. I miss them. And I'm having a blast editing this one. It's only I did start a new day job 7 weeks ago, which is 0 telework. Which means I don't have as much free time, but I'm trying to plan projects accordingly so that I can still get them done in a timely fashion, so that I'm not I I don't want to get to the point where I'm only posting like 2 or 3 videos a year. I don't want that because people will forget to tune in. And that's fair. Anyway, I already can't remember where I was going with this. I hope that the next one comes out within 2 weeks, which will put it on track to have come out within 2 months of the video before it, which is good. I can live with 6 videos a year. I think that's a pretty good pace for somebody who's doing this with a full-time job. Anyway, so that one's coming along what I think is nicely. But what I want to do is if that one's going to be done in 2 weeks, I want to be well on my way to accomplishing the next video, which is going to be the next episode of Saurian Cinema. I feel like I think doing 2 non-dinosaur videos and then an episode of Saurian Cinema feels right, because I have like 13 or 14 topics that I want to cover for Saurian Cinema ultimately. And in order to get them done before I'm old and gray, I like the idea of doing every 3rd video is the next episode of Saurian Cinema. And so anyway, that one's next. I'd love for that one to be out by I think I told people June, but I want it to be out sooner than that. I would love to be able to put out a video every 2 months. But anyway, the point is, I got to pick it. I need to at least pick what it's going to be. And I put a poll on Patreon, pulling up my phone here. I put a poll on Patreon to gauge interest of possible subjects. And the results surprised me. We got sorry, they changed their layout, their interface. Okay, poll, next episode of Saurian Cinema. So I posted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ideas that I have for future episodes. And to my surprise, the most popular result, with 23% of all results, of all votes, was not what I was expecting. It's called Military Fetishism and a Dash of Skepticism in Dinosaur Cinema. I didn't think people would be that interested in that one. But it's not even, I don't have like a fully formed critique or a special angle yet. It kind of took me by surprise that one got the most votes, but it's It's little more than something I noticed in dinosaur cinema is that the military pops up in a lot of it. Like a lot of dinosaur films have some military presence in it. Um, and the portrayal of the military varies widely from positive to neutral to negative. And again, I don't have a take yet. It's just something that I think is worth looking at. You've got like incredibly pro military, incredible, not to say pro military as in like it's propaganda, but a positive representation of the military, like in Jurassic Park 3, where the Navy and the Marines ride in at the end of the film to save the day. They are used as Deus Ex Machina to save the heroes. Um, and then you've got negative portrayals, extremely negative portrayals, like in Carnosaur, which is the low budget Corman film from 1993, where the military is literally quarantining a town so that they can kill everyone in it. So wildly different representations of the military. And then you've got everything in between. Like, what's a good in between example? There's often like, especially with like the Sci-Fi Channel original movie dinosaur films, the Asylum straight to video dinosaur films, there's always like a scientist who gets sent in with a team of like mercenaries or ex-marines or something. Um, and the portrayal of the military, um, I find it fascinating how it differs from film to film and how the military is implemented in dinosaur films. Like there's another one that's come that I'm finally thinking of a specific example in the middle is um Dinosaur Island, which is it is the lowest ranked dinosaur film. I have a list on Letterboxd ranking every dinosaur film I've ever seen. It's literally the lowest one. I gave it half a star. It's terrible, but it's about a group of military guys who get stuck on an island with dinosaurs and cave women who want to sleep with and kill them. Um, uh, but so the military, it was popping up in enough dinosaur films that I was like, this is worth examining. So anyway, so that got the most number of votes. I just got to figure out what my analysis is now, which I would do by rewatching all of these dinosaur films with military presence in them, and go from there. Sonatira, which according to my little dashboard here, you're the only person in the stream right now. So I feel like it's weird to say Sonatira says, but like it's you. But it seems like that's the case for alien films too. Dinosaurs, aliens, the other. Yeah. Aliens pop up in a lot of, or the military pops up in a lot of alien films too. And I remember watching a YouTube video about the military's use of Independence Day 2 as a recruitment tool, which I think was interesting. I don't think the military's tried it with any dinosaur films. Like most of them are either too low budget for the military to care, or the military isn't quite a big enough presence in the film. Like in Jurassic Park 3, the military does show up and save the day, but it's the last 3 minutes of the film. And I don't think the military was interested in getting involved there. But yeah, alien films, when usually the military shows up in a big way, and sometimes that actually influence the military, the real military takes notice of that. Let's see. And then second place on the poll that I posted on Patreon was also not what I thought would do well in the voting. Cave people films. Why were they a thing? Because they're not anymore. They're kind of considered a dead genre, like pirate movies were in the 90s. Like Cutthroat Island came out in 95, and it was incredibly expensive, and it bombed huge. And Hollywood was like, well, that is a cursed genre. Don't ever make another pirate movie ever again. And then like Pirates of the Caribbean comes out in 2003, and it was considered a phenomenal risk, and it was like nearly canceled even when they were doing principal photography. And they were like, we're not really sure what this is, but anyway, I'm getting off track. Cave people films. There were cycles of cave people films. There was cave people media was very popular in the late 1800s, when just when dinosaurs were starting to get popular. There were a lot of early dinosaur films which featured cave people in like the 30s. And then it kind of went out of fashion. They did a couple of really cheap, like, nobody really knows about them, nobody really talks about them, cave people films in the 40s and 50s, but then they came back in the 60s. Um, and that was probably the heyday with like 1 million years BC and when dinosaurs ruled the earth. And then they came back a little bit in the 80s. But they started to become like they were seen as cheesy already. So we got like cave people comedies in the 80s. And then the genre kind of then they weren't really consistently being made for a while. You'd get also in the 80s was Quest for Fire, which doesn't have dinosaurs in it, but you can't do a video about cave people films without bringing up Quest for Fire, which is one of the most of all the cave people films I've ever seen. Quest for Fire is probably one that like was trying to be better than any other cave person film ever made. Whether or not it succeeded is another question, but it's a fascinating example of the genre, the niche, the micro, the subgenre. And then finally, you get to closer to the modern age. I think the last one that got any kind of like there were two in like 2010, I think. There was 10,000 BC, which wasn't really a cave person film, because 10,000 BC, you're still in ancient civilizations. I've also never seen it. I've actually never seen 10,000 BC, but I would watch it for this and see how it fits in. But the other one from that year, either 2009 or 2010, was Year One, which was a comedy with Jack Black and Michael Cera. I've also never seen that one. I'm told it's terrible and it bombed. And ever since then, it's been considered a dead genre. Like I'm not aware of any other cave people films that came after that. But like the pirate genre, I think it could be revived. um, that's kind of where that video would end. Would be like kind of taking a look at where the genre's been and being like, okay, what can we leave behind? What would be interesting elements to bring into it? Why would we be interested in reviving it? And I think that'd be an interesting thing to look at. Also, why are they so goddamn horny? Most of them, or a lot of them. There is a particular subgenre, subgenre. Like cave people films are the subgenre, and then there's like horny cave people films as opposed to like comedic cave people films or special effects heavy one. Anyway, the point is there's plenty to talk about, and what I hope is that there's plenty to talk about with people who do not have a pre-established interest in this genre. Because I haven't ever sat down and gone looking for cave people films. It's not like a genre that I would go around saying I like. I think most of them are not good, in fact. But I've seen enough in their in since so many of them feature dinosaurs, I happen to have seen a bunch of them. And I think they would be an interesting subject of critical study that I haven't done any deep dives through YouTube. It's so hard to find anything specific on YouTube anymore anyway. Like you can type in like caveman films or cave people films into YouTube, but like the algorithm is going to decide what videos about the subject I'm going to see. Anyway, the point is somebody might have already done a YouTube video about this, but they're I don't like I've typed it into YouTube before. I'm saying I haven't done a deep dive into YouTube. I can't speak for their entire library, but in glancing at what's there, I don't think I think there's room for another video about cave people films and like an actual genre study of them. Or not even genre study because that makes me sound like a film student and I don't generally want to do that. But there's room to talk about them online uh, as an interesting subject. I guess that's all I mean. Sonatira says, "Well, you say maybe Jean Aurel kicked that off. Clan of the Cave Bear was made into a movie in the 80s. I think I've heard of that one. Is that the one with Daryl Hannah? Yes. Which and again, I don't want to I don't mean to present myself as a an expert in this subgenre yet because like this is a famous one. Just let my like this is a famous poster. I recognize the poster, but I've never seen the movie. Anyway, I would have to fix that. But yeah, so there was a cycle of them in the 30s, there was a cycle of them in the 60s, there was a cycle in the 80s, and then they tried it briefly again in the 2010s, the late teens. No, the late aughts, early teens, and the two that they released didn't light up the box office, and so I don't think anyone's ever tried since. And I think it's interesting. I think it's worth asking, like, why would we revisit this genre? What could we do with it? So anyway, that's idea number 2. Okay, and I won't keep talking so much about every single idea, but there was uh one of the videos is called four different interpretations of King Kong, which is what do I mean by that? There have been 4 adaptations of King Kong, 4 major motion picture adaptations of King Kong. The first one in 33, the second one in 76, um, the third one in 2005, and then the fourth one in 2017, the MonsterVerse Kong Skull Island. And all 4 of them carry a lot of metaphorical power. All 4 of them are very deliberately crafting metaphors, but for completely different metaphors. And I think that's interesting. I think that's interesting to talk about. That one might wind up being structured like I kind of already did a video about adaptations of The Lost World, 5 different adaptations, and how all 5 of them present indigenous people completely different. This would be just be taking a look at 4 Kong films and honestly focusing less on like the plot or like how they designed Kong, um, and more about like the thematic energy that they bring to the table. I think it's very different, and I think it's interesting that they're able to be so different, uh, even though all 4 of them are films about a giant gorilla. And then there's another one that also got 14% of the vote called The Straight to Video Dinosaur Renaissance, which is just I'm not sure if I could stand doing a whole video about this, frankly, but it's we are since straight to video DVDs became a thing in like the mid aughts, the late aughts, like with the Asylum, the production house, the Asylum, they have kind of never stopped putting out cheap straight to video dinosaur films. Nobody watches them, well, nobody you know of watches them. They are they started off shamelessly, um, as shameless mockbusters, right? They like deliberately coming out with a dinosaur film at the same time a big budget dinosaur film is coming out, in order to try and trick your poor grandmother into renting the wrong movie. And there's still a little bit of that. Like the Asylum released Triassic World the same week that Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom hit theaters. So there's still a little bit of that. They say that they're not trying to trick anyone. They say that they are merely taking advantage of a market awareness. They have some corporate speak for it. But the point is, we get a straight to video dinosaur movie like one or two a year for the past like 20 years, almost 20 years. Um and it's and you know you'll find one-off videos on YouTube of like, look at this terrible movie I watched. Let's roast it for 20 minutes. Cowboys and, and dinosaurs. Um and I kind of want to examine the genre kind of like as a critically interesting subject. Not they're all terrible. Like like when I'm talking about this kind of film, the best one is 1.5 stars, right? And the only reason it's 1.5 stars is because it most adequately copies a better blockbuster out there. Um, but but whether or not you actually want to watch them is beside the point. I think it's still an interesting cultural byproduct. I think it's still an interesting uh um I don't want to say artistic. The people making them are not trying to make bad movies. That's the thing. They all get greenlit for incredibly cynical money making purposes, uh, by the CEOs of this company, right? Like they're greenlit for very shrewd reasons, but nobody involved is trying to make a shitty film. They just uh, they just have an incredibly squashed production schedule and no money. Um, And I think I kinda wanna just, like, do a deep dive and just, like, take a look at them as a genre, not just as, like, something that movie YouTubers mock for 20 minutes and move on. But, it part of my hesitation to make that video isn't that it's a bad idea for a video, but it's that, every I don't know, when I see a thumbnail of a YouTuber who's like, I watched 47 Disney Channel original movies last month, and here's my takeaway. I don't know. They're like surge repellent. I'm like, I want nothing to do with those videos. The only one I ever watched and actually enjoyed was when Jenny Nicholson did. She was like, I'm on lockdown, so I watched all 14 Land Before Time films, and she just very straightforwardly ranked them, and I thought that was a delightful video. Um, but yeah, when other people do it, I don't know, it feels like they're just, like, chasing an I don't know. My my knee-jerk reaction is that they don't actually have anything to say, that they're just that they came up with the idea and then forced themselves to make the video, if that makes sense. Like, if someone's like, "I watched every Disney Channel original movie," I'd be like, my first question is why? Why did you watch every Disney Channel original movie? And I can't help but feel like the answer is going to be for content, and that's not how I roll. Um, but what I like about this particular idea is that it's not like straight to video dinosaur film can mean there's not a fixed number of films, right? I still get to choose which movies I'm going to talk about and how I'm gonna talk about them and how I get to structure it. Um, so it doesn't feel quite so gimmicky to me. And I know that I know that I am not clout chasing. I know that I'm interested in it as a serious inquiry into the genre. Anyway, but that one was tied for third place in the in the quiz. And then we got so we had military fetishism and a dash of skepticism. We had cave people films, straight to video dinosaur renaissance, 4 different interpretations of King Kong. And then in 5th place, we had the history of Saurian cinema is almost as old as cinema itself, which all that is just a video about the history of dinosaur cinema, which was kind of I don't I've what am I trying to say? I've wondered if there shouldn't just be a very straightforward video about like the history of dinosaur cinema as part of the Saurian Cinema series. I have started. I have attempted to, and why wouldn't it be first, right? Because it wasn't until I made like 4 of these things before I was like, maybe there should just be a general introductory episode about the history of dinosaur films. But I could never get far into the script. Like I'd get stuck at like The Lost World in 1925 because it would just be kind of like there's no analysis. Like if I'm just doing inventory, if I'm just doing roll call, I'm like this film had dinosaurs in it and it's notable for this reason. Um this was the first dinosaur film. This was the first animated dinosaur film. This was the first Willis O'Brien film. It's some the history of dinosaur cinema. I mean, like the most I could do is like put it like describe it in a way where my personality might shine through. But I would want to put what am I trying to say? I want more of an angle. I want it to be more than just presenting trivia. So anyway, so I've kind of what I've done, and I mentioned this on Blue Sky. Hang on, I need to. My throat's already hurting. I've mentioned on Blue Sky that I've thought of 2 more ideas since I posted that poll, and one of them is a modification of this idea, the history of dinosaur cinema. Um, I've I I started writing the introduction, and I said something like, because the history of dinosaur cinema is the history of a lot of things. It's also the history of the studio system, and it's the history of film marketing, and it's the history of film distribution, and it's the history of special effects. Because dinosaurs through history have been realized in different ways on camera. Like the very first one was probably animated, hand drawn animation, and then they very quickly moved to stop motion animation, and then um, you get animals with prosthetics glued to their bodies, the poor things, and then you get puppets of some kind. What not necessarily hand puppets, although there were definitely hand puppets, but dudes in suits, dudes in rubber suits, basically puppets that are powered by humans in some capacity. And then you get animatronics, and then you get CGI. And I wrote this as an introduction to the history of dinosaur cinema, and I wasn't liking it. And I thought, well, what if I did a video about the history of how to get a dinosaur on screen, which is the history of dinosaurs, the history of dinosaur special effects. And then again, I chafed at that idea a little bit. I was like, well, I don't just want to be presenting trivia. I don't just want to be doing, well, stop motion animation was kind of modernized by Willis O'Brien in 1925, and then it had a resurgence with Ray Harryhausen in the 60s, it was Willis O'Brien's protege, and then they sort of started doing robots in the 80s, and then Jurassic Park will open the floodgates for CGI, and then chronicling all the CGI dinosaur films since then. And I was like, that's still just trivia. That's still just an inventory. So I landed on an angle this afternoon, that I really liked, which is it doesn't just have to be an inventory, a history of dinosaur special effects. It could also be a rant, my rant, about how filmmakers tend to abandon the previous technology once the next one gets developed. And I think that's the wrong call. I think everything that I've mentioned, I think hand drawn animation, um, stop motion animation, animatronics, CGI, and yes, even live animals in the frame, not with prosthetics glued to them. We shouldn't do that. But utilizing live animals in the frame, these are all tools that we can still use. These are 5 methods to get them on screen at our disposal. Oh, and people in suits. 6 methods that none of them necessarily should be abandoned. Uh, and and yet, like by the time they soft reboot Jurassic Park in 2015 with a film called Jurassic World, there's precisely one technique used throughout the entire film, and that's CGI. There was they did one animatronic, and I hesitate to call it that. It's a couple of shots of of a dying apatosaur lying in the grass, its head, and it like makes a couple of like breathing noises, and it looks up at Chris Pratt plaintively, and then it dies. And then for the sequels, they were like, well, no, we should up the use of animatronics. That's still a worthy technology, and they brought some of them back, which is the right call. But my angle for this video that I have in mind is to be like, why should we get rid of any of them? Like like you hear like people in suits running around as dinosaurs, and you think, well, that's stupid. That's like low budget films from the 60s and 70s, right? And it's not. Uh, BBC turned Walking with Dinosaurs into a stage show. And the dinosaurs, I mean, the big dinosaurs are still robotic, like the T Rex is robotic. But the mid sized theropods and the raptors are people in suits, and they're anatomically correct, and they're pretty impressive. Um, you can't um like you can't just have somebody performing in a suit in front of a camera and then call it quits. You'd still need to do post-production work. Things like at the like, like erase the performer's legs that are sticking out of the bottom of the dinosaur, erase them in post-production. But they move with such a more believable um speed. Um That, I don't think it should be abandoned, and then stop motion animation as well, I think is more impressive than CGI, and I've seen it's usually just, like, independent animators, with a YouTube channel who are uploading videos to Blue Sky, where they'll take old stop motion animation footage, and they will just use some basic digital keyframe compositing stuff, and they'll clean it up so that it looks more it doesn't have that, like, jittery, stuttery effect, that you get with stop motion animation. They'll clean it up so that it looks more so that the movement looks more believable and contiguous, um, but you have the power of a real thing being photographed as opposed to CGI, which I don't care how many polygons they keep adding to these models, you still you still know it's a CGI T-Rex. Like it's a more and more realistic looking CGI T-Rex every decade, but it's still CGI. And I think there's a um I don't know, I just think that stop motion animation is something that shouldn't have been abandoned so quickly when CGI hit the scene. Anyway, so that's my angle that I'm working on. Sonatira says, if they do that, it's harder to justify all the money spent on the new tech. Yeah, I definitely think money is a big problem, or money is a big motivating factor in how they choose how to realize some of these effects. Stop motion animation in particular would probably be the most expensive method. Um, because you can't speed it up. It's always going to be bound by the speed of an animator moving moving the model 24 times and taking 24 pictures in order to get 1 second of footage. You can't speed that up. And the thing that costs movies the most money is time, the time of the people who are working on it. So this is kind of, um, I don't know. It's like the kind of thing where if I don't know how willing a studio would be, I don't know how excited a studio would be about it, since it would be a lot more expensive than CGI these days. But I don't know. I think I obviously think dinosaur movies are a worthwhile endeavor. And I'm convinced if I could just take the movies in my head and like put them on the screen, people would remember what it was like to be in 1993 again when they saw a movie as plausible as Jurassic Park. That's the thing that I think is ultimately missing from the dinosaur subgenre as a whole is plausibility. Nobody's tried making a plausible dinosaur film since 1993. Um, it's been 32 years since anybody was like, let's get the audience to suspend their disbelief. And I think we could do it again. Uh, I think one of the main, okay, I could talk a lot for about this stuff. Like I'm like sighing because I don't even know where to begin. Um, but we all know that by now, the public knows by now that the method used and described in Jurassic Park to recreate dinosaurs is not possible because they would have done it by now, basically. Um, and so, like the more Jurassic Park movies they make, well, they're Jurassic World movies now. The more Jurassic World movies they make, the less and less it takes place in our world, right? They have to keep they have to keep pushing it into a world that looks less and less like ours. And I think it's not like you can't put dinosaurs in a fantastical setting. In fact, some of the best dinosaur movies ever made do that. But the Jurassic Park series was so successful, I think, in part because it felt so grounded and plausible. And we couldn't be further away from plausibility in that franchise right now. But there are other techniques besides pulling DNA out of amber that you could use to create a dinosaur. And as far as I know, I don't think they've been depicted on cinema yet. They're probably, unless it was like a throwaway line in a straight to video film. Um, but anyway, the point is you can make dinosaurs plausible again. And if you combine that with new special effects techniques, or rather old special effects techniques that can be improved through the use of carefully applied digital technology, um, I think you could have a real winner on your hands, not just in terms of box office, but in terms of like a dinosaur film that adults take seriously, which um I don't think dinosaur movies have really been trying much since Jurassic Park. Um, I think maybe Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom was asking to be taken seriously, but it inherited a lot of bullshit from Jurassic World. Like it couldn't choose which characters it was going to be about, that sort of thing. And so it inevitably suffered for all that. But anyway, um, I guess I'm getting off topic, even though the whole stream is about dinosaur movies. Sonatira says the woolly mice are the closest we got to de-extinction so far. Yes, that was for anybody watching this stream way in the future. It was a recent headline that they created woolly mice, which I didn't delve too deep into that story, but I thought the understanding was that they got certain genes to be expressed in modern mice, not that they cloned an extinct species of mouse. And the truth, from what I understand, um, they're not going to clone woolly mammoths. De-extinction, DNA degrades very quickly. That's like the great unspoken secret of like recreating extinct dinosaurs, and they knew it back in the 90s. Like when Jurassic Park came out, Crichton, when he wrote the book, he was like, okay, yeah, it took industrial grade levels of amber to find pieces, teeny tiny pieces of dinosaur DNA, which was then painstakingly reconstructed over the course of a decade before they got like a 1% survival rate of their cloned animals. So he emphasized how difficult it was. But what we've learned in the 30 years since is that it's just not possible. That you don't get DNA, you don't get DNA that's nothing close to getting. I mean, like he said that they were only recovering pieces. You're lucky to get nucleotides out of 66 million year old fossils. But anyway, oh, and that applies for stuff that died more recently too, like getting usable clonable DNA strands out of these woolly mammoths that they pull out of the Siberian tundra every now and then. Even those don't have much by way of usable DNA. Like just recreating creatures that have gone extinct this past century, like the Tasmanian tiger. It's a phenomenal amount of money and research that would be required, and there's no guarantee that it would work. And that's from stuff that's only been extinct for 100 years. Anyway, so how do you get a dinosaur? Well, I'll give you a hint. And I'm not sorry, that sounds really condescending to Sonatira, but when I record these live streams, I'm cognizant of the fact that someone might be watching them in the future. So I'm not speaking directly to you, Sonatira. But anyway, what was I saying? I will give everyone watching, anyone who watches this, a hint. Not all dinosaurs went extinct. Birds are still dinosaurs. They are the direct descendants of dinosaurs. That is where you can find 100% of a dinosaur DNA strand is in birds. And you might think, yeah, but they don't look like dinosaurs. I mean, they have like the same basic body shape, very basic body shape, but they're not dinosaurs. They don't look like them. They don't look like the fossils we pull out of the ground from 65 million years ago. No, they don't. But that is where the genetic engineering comes in. You can take modern birds and get them to express the genes that are still in their DNA to make them look like dinosaurs, like non-avian dinosaurs. And anyway, that is the new plausible method of getting something that looks like a dinosaur. And as far as I know, it hasn't been put in film yet. Certainly not in a big budget film. And that would be the thing that I'd be interested in exploring. Maybe modern audiences don't care. I always get seized by that thought. I'm like, well, what if I'm the only person who's interested in this stuff? What if do modern audiences really care how plausible the method of bringing them back is? Don't they just want to see dinosaurs running around? And then I remember, no, that's not all they want to see, because that was the success of Jurassic Park, is that Crichton got people to believe that these dinosaurs could be brought back, or that maybe they could be brought back. You look at all the dinosaur films that came before Jurassic Park, and they're not trying to convince anybody that dinosaurs might be able to be brought back to life. They're all cave people films and Lost World films, like there are remnant dinosaurs still alive. Jurassic Park was one of the first big pieces of media that took a crack at plausibility. Anyway, that's my spiel about plausibility. Where was I going with this? Anyway, rounding out the poll, We had Dinosaur Children's Media, which I thought was gonna be, like, the front runner, but it got the lowest number of votes. Um, Dinosaur Children's Media, people think of, like, Land Before Time, um, or Barney. I'm not gonna rewatch Barney for that one. Um, but, I don't know, I'd watch Camp Cretaceous, finally. It's been on my watch list for a long time. Um, haven't seen a single episode, but it's got good reviews, so I'd finally watch that. Um, I would wanna compare Land Before Time and The Good Dinosaur, the Pixar film from 2015, because 'cause I've seen both, and Land Before Time is this unassailable classic, and everybody said Good Dinosaur sucked, that it was, like, really disappointing and boring. I watched them both, and I'm like, I kind of it's hard to wipe away all the nostalgia off of any viewing of, Land Before Time, uh, and target audi I'm no longer the target audience for Land Before Time, notably. It is for children, and I am no longer a child, so I don't get as much out of it as I did back then. But I think The Good Dinosaur aimed higher, which is worth discussing. Because and why compare them all? Because they have essentially the exact same plot, um, of like a young sauropod who's separated from his family and has to get back to them, and like has all these episodic adventures along the way and learns about what it means to be um like brave or an adult or whatnot. Almost the exact same story, but one of them is aiming higher, and the one that aimed lower is much more beloved. And anyway, so I'd want to talk about that. I want to talk about a Finnish heavy metal rock band called Heavisaurus, where the performers dress as dinosaurs on stage, full head to toe dinosaur costumes, but they build themselves as a heavy metal rock band for children. So I talk about that. Um, that would be Dinosaur Children's Media. I thought that would be a runaway hit on the poll, but no, it only got 9% of the vote, whereas first place got 23%. So I got less than half. And then finally, the last result of the poll was another one that I thought would steal the show, but it came in last place, and that's kaiju films. I don't know if maybe it's because I've already made a hefty kaiju film video before when I w- I did a rundown of the first 15 films of the Godzilla series, the Showa films. Um, and I do have plans, long-standing plans. It's taken me forever to get around to it, but I do also want to do an analysis of the Heisei series, which is the next 8 um, Godzilla films that came out after 1975. Um, I think it's 8, but the Heisei series is the Godzilla films that came out between 1984 and 1995. Um, so yeah, I've already done a video about the Godzilla films. I've got another video about Godzilla films I want to make. So it's like throwing in another kaiju video in there. I don't know, maybe the demand just isn't that high. Um, that would be an interesting one though. Like when I think of dinosaur kaiju films that aren't Godzilla, what do we got? There's like the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. There's and I'm just blanking. It's been a long week. I am exhausted. I am sitting if like I sit here exhausted before you all um anyway, I blanked when I was trying to come up with like other examples of stuff too. But anyway, point is there's enough to talk about, but um I don't know what's worse, either including the Godzilla films again and then I'm repeating myself, or excluding the Godzilla films and then the video is incomplete. um I think what I would wind up doing is just talking about Godzilla. I've never talked about Godzilla as a dinosaur before. I've talked about him as like um a metaphor for nuclear attacks and all the all the various cultural anxieties of Japan of the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, but I've never talked about him as a giant dinosaur. Um, and that would be interesting. I could work him in there. Anyway, and that was that was everything as far as the poll was concerned. One other idea I thought about, I've always wanted to do a video about Dinotopia as part of the Saurian Cinema series. But there's a couple problems with that. Dinotopia is mostly a book series, picture books, gorgeous pictures by James Gurney, uh, but it would be a video about essentially not a film. It would be about a book series, which would be new territory for me. I have done 2 videos about the Animorph series, which is also about books and not movies, but those videos were incredibly short. They were like 5 or 6 minutes a piece, I think. Um, but then I was circling back to it, and they did do a mini series, a Dinotopia mini series, in the early 2000s. But that's I don't think it was more than 3 hours long, and it was I remember I did watch it when I was a kid, and even as a kid, I was bored. So it wasn't good, I don't think, from what I remember. Uh, and I don't want to make a video about one property that I don't like. Um, but anyway, I hit on an idea that interests me, and the idea is my pitch for a Dinotopia adaptation. And more than that, because I've had that idea before too. What if I did an episode of Saurian Cinema that was my pitch for a Dinotopia movie? And it still didn't feel justified enough. Like there needs to be more of a hook than that. And so recently, Movie Oubliette, my favorite podcast about movies, did an episode on John Carter. And John Carter is a film that I think on paper everything worked, and then you watch the final movie and it's kind of meh. Um, and only after it comes out do you realize what all the things that was actually working against it. One of the things being, John Carter is a very old story. It's now it's over 100 years old, and it was groundbreaking, and it was quite the trailblazer for its genre at the time. But they waited too long to adapt it. And in the 100 years between its publication and its adaptation to film, every other sci-fi fantasy filmmaker picked it clean. So every scene in John Carter, the book, has kind of already been adapted into other films like Star Wars and Avatar and all these other things. So the film sort of felt kind of been there, done that. Kind of like, well, why did we make this movie again? What unique thing does it have to offer? And Dinotopia, even though it's not nearly as old as John Carter, I think Dinotopia is only 30 years old. I think it came out in 93, the same year as Jurassic Park. So it's only 30 years old, but it has also kind of been picked clean by filmmakers. The main city of Dinotopia is Waterfall City. That became Naboo. George Lucas, I think James Gurney might have actually been, don't quote me on this, but I think the creator of Dinotopia might have actually been a concept artist for Star Wars. And so we've already seen Waterfall City in a different movie. A lot of the technology, they have like these interesting, like kind of steampunky vehicles that are often semi-powered by the wildlife of Dinotopia, like Triceratops is their tractors, and they move around riding the backs of dinosaurs, or they have these submersibles that are pulled by like mosasaurs or interesting things like that. And but apparently, and again, don't quote me on this. This is based on a Tumblr post. I have to do the research for the video. Uh, but a lot of James Gurney's ideas for Dinotopia made its way into films like Atlantis: The Lost Empire, to the point where like Disney. I've read that Disney actually paid him to avoid litigation. That they settled with him out of court. Um, because he was like, your designs for this movie look a lot like what I put into Dinotopia. So anyway, long story short, Dinotopia, it has a lot of the same barriers to overcome that John Carter failed to. So my video, the angle I was thinking was like, Dinotopia would have the same problems as John Carter. How could we adapt it in a way where those problems are overcome? That's my idea. That was the other idea I came up with. I'm excited about all of them, but I think I'm leaning towards the one that I think I talked about it the longest. Was it began life in my head as like history of dinosaur cinema, and then it became history of dinosaur special effects, and then it's kind of become this all-encompassing, like, why did we develop all these methods of realizing dinosaurs on film and then abandon them all? And that I think it's worth circling back to. I think it'd be interesting. I think it'd be hella informative. Um, I've never seen a video on YouTube of somebody tracking just like the chronology of the tech through the genre like this. I'm sure people have. They're hard to find, and I haven't found the good ones yet. Um, and which is like, it's like there's blood in the water when I feel like I could make the best version of a video on a given subject, right? Like that's a very powerful motivating force for me. It's the idea that, oh, I could do this. I could fill a gap in the YouTube ecosystem here. So anyway, that's probably the one I'm gonna do next. Just because I'm the most excited about it, and I think it's the most fully formed idea. And it's also, I feel like I've made 6 episodes, I think, of Saurian Cinema at this point, and I do like the idea of presenting a kind of just like general history of dinosaur films. But like I said, I don't want it to just be trivia. I don't want it to just be an inventory. Uh, and I want it to be through a specific angle. And I think picking special effects is, I'm very interested. Um, I think it's and it'll carry me through the entire genre. Because you can't put a dinosaur on screen and not have it be a kind of effect, right? That's kind of why I think it's a perfect subject through which to analyze dinosaurs on film, is because they're all a special effect. That's the one thing that all dinosaur films have in common, which makes it as good an excuse as any to go through the entire history of the genre. Anyway, thank you so much, Sonatira, for listening to me monologue about all this for an hour. You really helped me organize my thoughts and clarify what I like talking about, which is very helpful when it comes to picking the next subject. It's been a very long week, though, and my voice is very gravelly and dry, and I think I'm going to go ahead and end the stream here. But thanks again for watching and listening, and I look forward to talking to everybody next month. Yep. Bye.